Crystal sunlight flooded the white-tiled foyer, but what everyone felt was winter. The word exploded like a gunshot through marble and glass. "Get out now." A young Nigerian man in a burning red polo shirt leaned forward, jaw clenched like a weapon, fingers stabbing the air like a judge delivering sentence. An elderly woman with a cane flinched, palm pressed to her chest, eyes flooding with the kind of tears that drown souls. The door behind her stood open, the world outside brutally bright, the mansion inside suddenly cold enough to kill. A small black handbag clutched to her chest, a walking cane trembling in her grip. Security frozen mid-step, the housekeeper's eyes on the floor. Even the glass staircase seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't a stranger being expelled. This was Mama Ezinne, the woman who sold her only land so her son could eat. The woman whose hands bled in Ajegunle market so King Obiekwe could build an empire. And now? Now he was throwing her into the rain like garbage. But here's what Kin didn't know. The bracelet was a lie. The medical report was forged. And inside that small black handbag his mother clutched, the deed to the warehouse that saved his entire company from collapse. My friend, tell me something. Can a mansion built on a mother's sacrifice survive when the son forgets who laid the foundation? Drop your location below. US, Abuja, Johannesburg, London, New York. Let's see how far this story travels. And if this hits your heart, like this video so others can feel it too. Hit subscribe to Beyond Voices because the ending will shatter you in ways you're not ready for. Let's go back. Before the mansion, before the marble, before the red polo and the glass staircase and the expulsion that would haunt King Obiekwe for the rest of his life. In the humid afterglow of a Lagos rainy season, there was Ajegunle, zinc roofs drumming when the rain came, open gutters overflowing with the city's forgotten water, and the smell of survival mixed with something that refused to die. Hope. In a cramped one-room apartment where the ceiling leaked during storms, two souls depended on each other to survive. Mama Ezinne, a small woman with a back bent too early by life's burdens, and her only son, Ajegunle, the single ray of light in her shadowed world. Her husband died before Ken could even say the word father. On the day they buried him. Cheap casket, borrowed chairs, mourners who vanished when the food ran out. She knelt beside his grave, tears soaking into the red earth as if they could form a path for him to come home again. But the earth never returns the ones it takes. So from that moment on, she was mother and father in one body. Every morning she rose before the sun opened its eyes behind the lagoon. She was a seamstress once, skilled hands that could turn cheap fabric into something beautiful. But survival demanded more than beauty. She sold her sewing machine to buy food. She sold her pride to become a market porter at mile 2, carrying loads heavier than her body should bear. Shoulders screaming with pain, she learned to swallow like bitter medicine. Ken grew up breathing the scent of sweat and hearing the ragged rhythm of his mother's exhausted breath. Some weeks rain poured endlessly, business failed, and dinner was rice with salt and water. She watched her son chew slowly, and it felt like 1,000 knives piercing her chest. That night she held him close and whispered, "Don't be sad, Nwam. I will do everything so you can study and live with dignity like others." Those weren't promises. They were sacred vows carved into her heart. There was a day she couldn't pay his school fees. She knelt right at the school gate, begging the headmaster to let her son finish the term while she searched for money. Other parents stared with judgment. Whispers stung like needles. But she stood up, straightened her faded wrapper, and told herself, "If my son can learn, then every humiliation is worth it." Ken saw everything. He didn't cry in front of her. His tears dried into silent fire, turning into a hunger, not just to escape poverty, but to give his mother the life she deserved. Whenever he scored highest in class, he sprinted home barefoot across scorching ground, waving his test paper high. "Mama, I'm first again." She would hug him, eyes glistening with tears she tried to hide. "Well done, Nwam. One day, the whole world will know your name." But with every step forward Ken took, her body stepped one backward. Hands that once were soft became cracked and bleeding from endless labor. Knees that once were strong now buckled under market loads. Feet that once were quick now dragged through the streets of Ajegunle like broken promises. One evening, she sat mending her old clothes by kerosene lamplight, preparing to sell vegetables again in the morning. The flame flickered, her shadow stretching long across the mud wall. Ken stared at her, voice trembling. Mama, if you're too tired, I can quit school and help you. She placed a calloused hand on his head. No, everything I couldn't have, you must have. If you stop now, all my sacrifices mean nothing. Then she smiled. A brave smile, hiding oceans of pain. Everyone in Ajegunle knew Mama Ezinne was poor, but her dignity was priceless. When Ken's WAC results came back, straight A's, university material, she held the admission letter like a treasure too precious to touch. University fees loomed like mountains. That's when she did the unthinkable. She sold the ancestral land in Umuoji, the only inheritance from her husband's people, the plot where his father was buried, the ground that was supposed to be Ken's birthright. She sold it quietly, scraped every naira, and told Ken a benefactor had provided the money, because she knew if he learned the truth, pride would make him refuse. The day she put him on that bus to Lagos mainland for university, she held the ticket like it was made of glass. When the bus pulled away, she ran alongside it until dust swallowed his figure. She stood there a long time, arms wrapped around her chest, as if holding her heart in place. She feared that once he became a man of the city, he might forget the scent of Ajegunle soil, forget the wrapper tied around her waist, forget the hands that bled so his could stay clean. She didn't know. That very day, sitting in the back of that bus watching Ajegunle fade into the distance, Ken made a silent vow. If I succeed, Mama will be the first person I bring home. If I become wealthy, her hands will never bleed again. And from that moment forward, every sleepless night, every salt and water dinner, every drop of sweat she shed, every humiliation she endured, all of it began to bloom in the garden of his future. The city welcomed Ken with skyscrapers that seemed to touch human ambition itself. Neon lights, endless traffic, glittering dreams painted across the Lagos skyline. But every step he took on those university grounds replayed his mother's words. Success isn't for show. It's to protect the ones you love. He studied like a man possessed. While others partied in Yaba, Ken was in the library until security kicked him out. While classmates showed off new phones, Ken wore shoes with cardboard insoles and a shirt his mother washed and ironed with love so fierce it could be felt through the fabric. Some laughed behind his back. Village boy. But he tightened his grip on his cheap backpack and kept walking. He wasn't there to look good. He was there to defeat destiny. And destiny was about to meet a boy who refused to lose. But success has a way of arriving with shadows attached. And the higher Ken climbed, the easier it became to forget which hands pushed him up from the mud. The bus that carried Kenechukwu away from Ajegunle also carried a weight he didn't yet understand. The weight of a mother's love so heavy it could crush mountains, and the weight of expectations so high they could build empires or destroy them. The lecture hall at University of Lagos smelled like ambition mixed with cheap deodorant and yesterday's hope. Ken sat in the back row, business administration textbook open to Chapter 7, Market Entry Strategies. But his pen wasn't taking notes on market penetration. It was sketching. A dining table with curved legs that looked Italian but could be made in Mushin. A sofa design that screamed luxury but whispered affordability. Furniture that didn't exist yet in Nigerian markets. Pieces that could make middle-class families feel rich and rich families feel refined. His shoes had cardboard insoles. The original soles had worn through 2 months ago, but new shoes cost 3,500 Nigerian nairas, and that was 3 weeks of meals he couldn't afford to sacrifice. So he cut cardboard from a discarded carton, shaped it with a razor blade, and walked like a man with secrets in his steps. Hunger became his constant companion. Not the romantic kind poets write about, the actual gnawing emptiness that makes your stomach fold in on itself during afternoon lectures. Ken learned to skip breakfast entirely, saving his daily 200 Nigerian nairas for one real meal at night. On Wednesdays, when transport from Yaba to the main campus cost 150 Nigerian nairas, he walked 2 hours each way, feet burning in cardboard shoes, but it meant he could eat. Some Saturdays, instead of resting like other students, Ken took the Malu bus to Idamoto Market. He'd walk through the furniture section, notebook hidden, eyes recording everything. The joinery on imported dining sets, the fabric quality on Chinese sofas, the price tags that made customers wince. He'd calculate margins in his head. If it sells for 80,000 Nigerian nairas and probably cost 20,000 Nigerian nairas to import, That's 300% markup. What if I could do 200% and still make it work? The sellers would chase him away. Oga, you day price or you day buy? He'd smile and leave. But the numbers stayed with him, breeding possibilities in the margins of his textbooks. Weekend calls home were windows into a world he was trying to escape but couldn't abandon. Nwam, how is school? Mama's voice came through the crackling phone line, weaker each week, like something was slowly draining her. Fine, Mama. I'm managing. That cough. That persistent cough she tried to muffle on the other end. Mama, that cough is getting worse. Have you seen a doctor? It's just dust from the market. You know how Ajegunle is during dry season. Stop worrying and face your books. But he worried. Late at night in the hostel, listening to his roommate snore, Ken stared at the ceiling and calculated. If I can start something now, build it while I'm still in school, by the time I graduate, Mama can rest. Really rest. No more markets. No more dust. No more coughing through phone lines like her lungs are giving up. Third year, second semester. Ken made his move. He partnered with Baba Taiwo, a carpenter in Mushin who'd been making furniture for 30 years with hands that knew would like a father knows his children. Ken drew the designs, modern pieces with clean lines that Lagos was beginning to crave. Baba Taiwo provided the workshop and labor. Together they pooled 50,000 Nigerian nairas, Ken borrowing 10,000 Nigerian nairas each from 5 different people. 2 classmates, a generous lecturer, his church youth leader, and a neighbor from Ajegunle who remembered when Ken's father was alive. The plan was simple: build 10 pieces, sell to contacts, repay loans, scale up. But Lagos has a way of laughing at simple plans. The wood supplier delivered timber that looked perfect on the surface. They built 3 dining tables, 2 wardrobes, a bed frame. Then Ken noticed it: tiny holes, fine sawdust collecting beneath the furniture legs. He pressed his finger into the wood. It crumbled like stale bread. Termites. The entire batch was infested. Orders canceled. Customers demanding refunds they'd already spent on materials. Baba Taiwo apologizing with tears in his eyes, his reputation on the line. Creditors calling, voices shifting from friendly to threatening. Ken's phone became a weapon that rang at all hours, each call a reminder that dead in Lagos doesn't sleep. The night he almost quit, Ken sat on the hostel steps at 2 a.m., staring at a dropout form he'd collected from the student affairs office. The math was brutal: 50,000 Nigerian nairas in debt, no pathway to repayment. Mama still sending her last naira for his feeding. Maybe he should just go back to Ajegunle, get a job as a conductor on Malu buses, pay back slowly over years. At least then he wouldn't be a burden pretending to be a student. He thought about calling Mama. But how do you tell your mother that her sacrifices, the sold land, the bleeding hands, the humiliation at school gates, were all for a son who failed at the first real test? He didn't make the call. Instead, he folded the dropout form and shoved it deep in his bag where he wouldn't have to see it. 2 days later, his phone buzzed with an alert: 15,000 Nigerian nairas deposited. Ken stared at the screen like it was lying. He checked again. Real money. Sender listed as anonymous. But there was a note attached through the banking app: from your father's people. Make him proud. His father's people? The same relatives who vanished after the funeral? Who never sent a naira when Mama was breaking her back at Mile 2 Market? Ken didn't question it too hard. When you're drowning, you don't investigate the hand that pulls you up. You grab it and breathe. What he didn't know: in a small parish church in Ajegunle, Mama Ezinne's women's group had just concluded their monthly meeting. 30 women, each contributing 500 Nigerian nairas from market sales, housekeeping wages, and hairdressing money they could barely spare. Mama and Kiru counted the cash carefully: 15,000 Nigerian nairas total. Father Obiekwe transferred it through the parish account with instructions from Mama Ezinne. Tell him it's from his father's people. If he knows it's from me, his pride will break him. The women nodded. They understood. Sometimes love must wear disguises to be accepted. The 15,000 Nigerian nairas became seed money for a new dream. Ken abandoned local production. Too many variables he couldn't control. Instead, he researched imports. Turkish furniture manufacturers, Chinese suppliers, pieces that looked like Italian luxury but cost a fraction of the price. The idea was simple but revolutionary for 2015 Lagos: affordable luxury. Make the middle class feel rich. Make the rich feel smart for not overpaying. He used the 15,000 Nigerian nairas plus another 35,000 Nigerian nairas scraped from new loans to place an order for a 40-foot container, dining sets, sofas, coffee tables. The gamble was insane. If it failed, he'd be 50,000 Nigerian nairas deeper in debt, with no degree and no future. The container arrived at Apapa port 3 weeks later. Then began the real torture. Customs delays, officials demanding facilitation fees, clearing agents who disappeared with down payments, bribes that bled his capital like a slow puncture wound. Days became weeks. Ken slept outside the port twice, guarding his investment like a soldier protecting the last stronghold. The morning the container finally cleared, Ken stood in the sun watching a forklift move his furniture into a truck, and something inside him shifted. This wasn't just furniture. This was proof that he could build something from nothing. His first sale came 2 weeks later. A client in Lekki, new money, tech entrepreneur, building a house that screamed, "I've arrived," bought a 6-seater dining set. 200,000 Nigerian nairas. The set cost Ken 45,000 Nigerian nairas to import. Ken stared at the bank alert for 5 full minutes. His hands shook. Not from fear this time. From possibility. That night, he called Mama. Her cough rattled through the phone immediately, but before she could muffle it, Ken spoke, voice trembling with relief and something fiercer, ambition burning clean and bright. "Mama, we are not going back to Ajegunle. Not ever." Silence on the other end. Then her voice, soft and weighted with prayers, answered, "Nwam, are you sure?" "I'm sure, Mama. I'm building something. And when it's finished, you'll never carry another load. You'll never sleep in a room with a leaking ceiling. I promise you." She wept quietly. He could hear it in her breathing, the release of years held tight in her chest. What Ken didn't hear was the way she whispered after hanging up, rosary beads sliding through trembling fingers. "Lord, let him remember where he came from. Let success not steal my son." But success was already knocking. And when success arrives wearing expensive shoes, it's easy to forget the cardboard insoles that carried you through the journey. In 5 years, Ken Obiekwe would stand in a white mansion in Lekki Phase 1, marble under his feet, glass reflecting his achievements. And he would point at the woman who made it all possible and say the words that would haunt him forever. "Get out now." But tonight, with 200,000 Nigerian nairas in his account and dreams expanding like Lagos traffic, Ken felt untouchable. He felt like a man who could build an empire. He just didn't realize empires need foundations. And you can't build higher than your foundation is deep. 5 years later, the convoy pulled into Lekki Phase 1 like a prophecy fulfilled. Security waved Ken through gates that slid open smooth as promises. Obiekwe Interiors wasn't just a business anymore. It was a brand. Celebrity endorsements. Features in Genevieve magazine. An Instagram page with 500K followers that made competitors study his every post like scripture. The mansion stood 3 stories high. Glass staircase catching afternoon light, Italian marble cool under bare feet, indoor plants staged by a decorator who charged 200,000 Nigerian nairas just to make fake nature look real. The kind of house that appeared in music videos. The kind of life Mama Ezinne once described as rooms without leaking ceilings. When Ken brought her to live with him, she arrived with one Ghana must-go bag, the small black handbag still across her chest, and her walking cane. She stood in the foyer, touching the walls like she might wake from a dream. "Nwam, is this ours?" "All of this." Ken's chest swelled watching her choose a room. The one with the window facing east so morning sun could find her during prayers. "Mama, rest now. Let me carry everything." But rest wasn't something Mama Ezinne knew how to do. She woke at 5 a.m., wrapper tied traditionally, sweeping the foyer before the housekeeper arrived. Staff found her in the kitchen trying to season jollof rice, insisting it needs more time. Ken would come downstairs to find her directing confused workers, and something in his stomach tightened. "Mama, we have people for that." The first sentence that created distance. She smiled, but her hands stilled on the broom. "I just wanted to help Nwam." Her routines became small rebellions. Morning prayers with rosary beads clicking softly. Afternoons watching Nollywood on the small TV, she insisted on keeping in her room. The wrapper tied the old way even though Ken bought her modern clothes that hung untouched in the wardrobe. Staff whispered when they thought no one was listening. "Oga's mother, she still acts like we are in the village." Ken heard it, pretended he didn't. But when clients visited for consultations, he'd usher them to the office wing, away from wherever Mama might be. Love battling against image. The poor boy inside him terrified that one wrong detail. A wrapper, an accent, a mother who insisted on sweeping her own floors, would collapse the tower he'd built. Mama's cough worsened. That persistent rasp from Ajegunle, now echoing off marble. Dizziness made her grip railings too tightly going downstairs. But when Ken asked, she waved him off. Just old age and wham. I don't want to be a burden. Burden. The word hung between them like smoke. One Thursday afternoon, Ken sat in a client meeting at the Eco Hotel, a politician's wife wanting an entire house furnished, 15 million Nigerian nairas budget. His phone buzzed. Mama calling. He glanced at the screen, silenced it. She just wants to talk. I'm busy building her future. The phone buzzed again. He typed a quick text. In a meeting, Mama. We'll call back. He closed the deal. 15 million Nigerian nairas signed. Success tasted like expensive wine. But he never called back. That night, returning home to find Mama asleep in her chair, rosary beads still wrapped around her fingers, Ken felt something crack. Not break, just crack. Like marble under pressure, it wasn't designed to hold. He kissed her forehead. She stirred, smiled without opening her eyes. You're home, Nwam. Yes, Mama. I'm home. But standing in that mansion, surrounded by everything he'd built, Ken felt farther from home than he'd ever been. The restaurant in Victoria Island didn't have prices on the menu. That's how you knew it was expensive. Ambient lighting made everyone look like they belonged in a fragrance commercial. Ken sat across from Tiniola Cole, watching her photograph her salmon before touching it. Phone angled to catch the golden hour glow through floor-to-ceiling windows. Perfect, she murmured, fingers dancing across the screen. Your brand needs moments like this. Luxury isn't just furniture, it's lifestyle. Tenny had been hired 3 months ago to manage Obiekwe Interior's social media. Within weeks, engagement tripled. She understood something Ken was still learning. In Lagos, perception wasn't just reality, it was currency. She was beautiful in that calculated way. Hair installations that cost more than most people's rent, nails that matched her outfit's accent colors, makeup applied with the precision of an architect. Everything about Tiniola Cole was designed, including this dinner. Her father was a retired civil servant from Ibadan. Her mother sold fabrics at Dugby Market for 30 years, threading needles with dreams that her daughter would never have to. Tenny learned early that her mother's calloused hands were a warning, not a badge of honor. Beauty and strategy. Those were the tools that open doors education couldn't unlock. She built her Instagram following the way Ken built his business, one strategic connection at a time. A photo with this musician. A tag location at that club. Outfits that whispered access without screaming desperation. By 25, she had 100K followers and a roster of clients who paid her to make their brands look aspirational. The seduction was mutual. Ken saw refinement. A woman who knew which fork to use, who could discuss art exhibitions in Ikoyi, whose English flowed smooth as the wine she sipped. Tenny saw wealth that wasn't inherited, ambition that mirrored her own, and a man still hungry enough to be molded. Their relationship unfolded like a music video. Rooftop dinners where the Lagos skyline became their backdrop, trips to Dubai where she posted photos that made other women calculate their boyfriend's net worth, sex that felt less like intimacy and more like two people celebrating their own success. Her first visit to the Lekki mansion, Tenny moved through rooms with an appraiser's eye. She complimented the marble, suggested minor adjustments to the lighting, smiled warmly when Mama Ezinne shuffled out in her wrapper to greet them. Welcome, Eneni, Mama said, the Igbo word for daughter falling easily from her lips. You are beautiful. My son has good eyes. Thank you, Ma. Tenny's smile was professional, the kind she perfected for brand events. But later, in Ken's bedroom with the door closed, her voice shifted. Babe, I love that you honor your mother. That's beautiful, truly. She paused, fingers tracing patterns on his chest. But maybe, have you thought about a caregiver situation? I noticed she's not well. The coughing, the dizziness. This mansion, it's a lot for someone her age. Ken stiffened. That's my mother. She stays. Of course she stays. Tenny's tone stayed soft, reasonable. I'm not saying remove her. I'm saying professionalize the care. You have clients visiting. Perception matters in this business. You know that. The seed was planted. 6 months later, Ken proposed on a rooftop in Ikoyi. Drone footage captured the moment. The ring, her surprise, the city lights blurring like stars. The video trended on Twitter, hashtag Obiekwe forever. Comments flooded in, "This is what black love looks like." Goals. My husband is taking notes. Mama Ezinne watched the video on her small phone, sitting alone in her room. She smiled, pressed the heart icon with her thumb. But something behind her eyes dimmed, like a candle catching a draft. Tenny tried, or appeared to try. She accepted Mama's offers to teach her oaf and sala with polite enthusiasm that never resulted in an actual cooking lesson. When Mama brought small gifts from the market, head ties, fresh ugwu from vendors she knew, Tenny thanked her graciously, then left them folded in a guest room drawer. "Eneni, you will teach me our ways?" Mama asked one afternoon, hope threading through the question. "Of course, Ma. Soon. I'm just so busy with the wedding planning." The wedding became Tenny's project. Color schemes, vendors, Instagram opportunities. Every decision a calculation. Mama tried to offer suggestions, traditional dishes, cultural elements. But her ideas arrived wrapped in broken English and were gently redirected by wedding planners who spoke in aesthetics Mama couldn't translate. Late one night, Mama sat in her room, the small black handbag open on her lap. Inside, beneath old receipts and her rosary, was a photograph. Young Ken with swollen eyes from crying after his father's death. She'd taken it years ago, not knowing why, just feeling she needed to remember that moment when everything changed. On the back, in her handwriting, "My reason for breathing." She traced the words with her finger, that persistent cough rattling in her chest. Outside her door, she could hear Tenny's laughter, bright and confident, filling spaces in the mansion that used to hold only her and Ken. Mama folded the photograph carefully, placed it back in the handbag, and pulled the zipper closed. Some treasures needed protecting, even in your own son's house. Especially in your own son's house. 3 months before the expulsion, Teeny Olacole sat in her Mercedes outside a private clinic in Ikoyi, engine running, air conditioning fighting the Lagos heat. On her phone screen, a photo of Mama Ezinne in her wrapper, smiling at something off camera. Tenny stared at it like an architect studying a building scheduled for demolition. She made the call. "Dr. Obi? It's Tenny. I need a favor." Wedding planning had become warfare. Every decision, the venue, the menu, even the color of the asoebi, somehow required Mama Ezinne's input. Not because Ken asked for it, but because his mother offered it with the relentless optimism of someone who didn't understand she was no longer needed. "Eneni, for the wedding, we should serve oaf and sala. It is our tradition. Ma, the caterer already has the menu finalized." But Nwam, tradition matters. And Ken would look between them, torn, until Tenny smiled graciously and said, "We'll see, Ma," which meant no but sounded like maybe. The bracelet had been a gift from Kunnel, the oil executive before Ken, back when Tenny was still calibrating which type of wealth suited her best. Rose gold, delicate, expensive enough to matter, but not so expensive she couldn't sacrifice it. She held it up to the light streaming through her windshield. Perfect bait. Ngozi, the housekeeper, was easier than expected. Single mother, an undocumented niece from Benin Republic living in her one room in Aja, terrified every day that immigration would knock. Tenny cornered her in the laundry room, voice soft, reasonable. "Ngozi, I know about Blessing. Your niece." The woman's face drained of color. "Help me with something small, and that information stays between us. Refuse, and I make one phone call." Tenny let the silence do the work. Simple choice. Dr. Obi owed her, not money, but the kind of debt that comes from Tenny's strategic amnesia about the married doctor's hand on her thigh at a club in 6. She met him after hours, clinic empty, his guilt making him compliant. "I just need letterhead. Official stamp. A report saying." She handed him notes on her phone. "Progressive dementia. Confusion. Fall risk. Recommend supervised care facility." "Tenny, this is a favor between friends. Unless you'd prefer, I wasn't so forgiving about Lagos Island. That Thursday night, your wife's birthday weekend." He printed the document. She left with it folded in her handbag, feeling nothing but efficiency. Balagan Market on a Saturday afternoon. Organized chaos. fabric stacked in towers of color. Tenny found a wrapper identical to Mama Ezinne's, the same green and gold ankara, the same pattern the old woman wore like a uniform. She bought two, just in case. The vendor tried to chat, but Tenny paid and left, the fabric wrapped in black nylon like evidence. Ibrahim, the security guard, carried bitterness like a second uniform. His mother died while he was deployed in Maiduguri, no one to care for her, village people who promised help but delivered nothing. When Mama Ezinne once refused to approve his salary advance after he was caught siphoning diesel to resell, that bitterness found a target. Tenny approached him during his night shift, voice sympathetic. Ibrahim, I know you understand. Some people, they take advantage of kindness. They create chaos. She painted Mama Ezinne as exactly what Ibrahim wanted to see. A village woman exploiting her son, standing in the way of progress. When the time comes, I just need you to confirm what you see. That's all. The truth. He nodded slowly. Truth was flexible when it aligned with your wounds. The setup required precision. Ken was drowning in a Turkish supplier crisis. Nigeria naira 8 million in delayed shipments. Clients threatening to cancel. He came home exhausted, temples throbbing. Perfect. Tenny studied Mama Ezinne's routines like a predator learning prey patterns. Morning prayers, 5:30 a.m. Afternoon rest, 2 p.m. Evening garden walk, 5:45 p.m. Always after climbing the stairs, always slightly dizzy. She practiced in the mirror. The discovery, the hurt, voice trembling but controlled. Ken, I don't want to believe it, but... Not accusatory, confused, wounded, reasonable. A woman protecting her future home, not attacking his mother. The night before execution, Tenny stood alone in the mansion foyer, Ken asleep upstairs. The glass staircase reflected her figure in fragments. Elegant dress, perfect posture, a woman who'd built herself into someone who mattered. She saw a victor, someone who identified an obstacle and removed it with the cold intelligence Lagos rewards. But the glass, with its fractured reflections, showed something else. A woman standing in a house built on another woman's blood, calculating how to erase the foundation while keeping the structure standing. Tenny turned away from the reflection. Conscience was a luxury she'd learned to live without. Tomorrow, everything would change. She'd make sure of it. Upstairs, in her small room, Mama Ezinne coughed into the darkness, rosary beads clicking softly as she prayed for her son, for his bride, for a family that felt more distant every day. She didn't know that prayers sometimes arrive too late to stop what's already been set in motion. At 5 a.m., Mama Ezinne stood in the kitchen humming Equim, the old Igbo worship song her mother taught her before poverty taught her everything else. Ogbono soup simmered on the stove, the scent of ground seeds and stockfish filling spaces the mansion's expensive air freshener could never reach. She stirred slowly, wooden spoon moving in circles that looked like prayers. Ken's favorite. She cooked it every Tuesday, leaving it warm for whenever his meetings ended. Small acts of love in a house where she increasingly felt like a guest. Upstairs, Ken woke to his phone screaming. Turkish suppliers. Mr. Obiekwe, without payment clearance today, we halt your shipment. Penalties apply. A celebrity client. Bro, I'm bringing you business. That discount is not negotiable. His temples throbbed. The stress built like Lagos traffic. Nowhere to go, pressure mounting, honking in his skull. He splashed water on his face, stared at his reflection. The mansion, the success, the image, all of it requiring constant defense. One crack, and everything could crumble back to Ajegunle. By noon, staff stood assembled in the living room like witnesses at a trial they didn't understand. Tenny clutched her wrist, face arranged in perfect distress. Hurt but controlled, confused but gracious. The performance she'd rehearsed. I left my bracelet by the sink this morning. Now it's gone. Her voice trembled just enough. No one else was in the master bedroom except. She paused, letting the silence do the work. Mama. Ngozi stared at the floor, terror making her shoulders fold inward. Ibrahim stood rigid, righteousness burning in his eyes. The other staff were statues, afraid to breathe wrong. The sound of a cane on marble, tap, 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 announced Mama Ezinne before she appeared. She descended slowly, headscarf tied with the careful dignity of someone who still believed respect was earned through proper presentation. The small black handbag crossed her chest like armor. What is happening? Nwam, what is wrong? Mama. Tenny's tone was gentle, poisonously reasonable. Please, let's just check your bag. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. The words hit like accusation wrapped in silk. Mama Ezinne's hand tightened on her cane. I am not a thief. I will not open my bag like a criminal in my son's house. Tenny had anticipated this. She turned to Ken, who'd just entered, stress and confusion radiating off him like heat. She pulled him aside, voice dropping to intimate concern, producing the folded medical report. Ken, I didn't want to worry you, but the doctor thinks it's dementia. Confusion. She might not even remember taking it. This is for her own safety. Ken stared at the letterhead, official stamps blurring before his exhausted eyes. The poor boy inside him screamed warnings. But the successful man, the one terrified of being exposed, of clients discovering his mother might be unstable, of his carefully built image cracking, that man started drowning. Sir, I found this in the laundry. Ngozi's voice barely audible, holding up a green and gold wrapper. It was hidden. Ibrahim stepped forward. Sir, I've noticed strange behavior. Items moved. Confusion when I greet her. Lies stacked like bricks, building a prison around truth. Mama Ezinne looked at her son, really looked, searching for the boy who once ran barefoot across Ajegunle's scorching streets waving test papers, the young man who promised her hands would never bleed again. Nwam, you know me. You know I would never. But Ken was drowning. In shame. In pressure. In all the old wounds reopening. The cardboard shoes. The village boy ridicule. The fear that he was always one wrong detail away from being exposed as someone who didn't belong in mansions. Mama, why are you making this difficult? Why can't you just? The words exploded before he could catch them. Get out now. The mansion held its breath. Crystal light flooded through glass, but everyone felt winter. Mama Ezinne's hand flew to her chest, palm pressed over her heart like she was trying to hold it inside her body. The cane trembled. Her entire frame shook, not with anger, but with something deeper. The physical manifestation of a soul breaking. Tenny's lips twitched with satisfaction before she rearranged her face into concern. Ken, maybe we should. Get out. Now. Each word a nail in a coffin. The household stood frozen. Ibrahim moved forward with rehearsed efficiency. The door opened. The world outside brutally bright with afternoon sun. The mansion inside suddenly cold enough to kill. Mama Ezinne walked toward that door. Each step took an eternity. Tap of the cane on marble. The small black handbag clutched to her chest like it contained her last piece of dignity. No one helped her. No one spoke. At the threshold, she turned. One last look at her son, the boy she bled for, the man she no longer recognized. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet for anyone but God to hear. Then she stepped outside. The door closed with a sound like thunder swallowed. Rain began falling. Lagos rain, sudden and merciless. Through the glass, they watched her small figure moving down the driveway, wrapper soaking through, cane tapping pavement, the black handbag held tight. Ken stood in his white mansion, marble cold under his feet, success surrounding him like expensive walls. But something was spreading through the house, a cold that had nothing to do with air conditioning, seeping through marble and bone and the hollow space where his heart used to be. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, Tenny touched Ken's shoulder gently, already planning the next phase. Neither of them saw Mama Ezinne stop at the gate, press her hand to the iron bars, and whisper 5 words that would haunt the mansion forever. I did not take anything. Then she walked into the rain, and the city swallowed her whole. The notification lit up Ken's phone at 11 p.m. at Obiekwe tagged you in a post. Celebrity client. Interior reveal. 50 likes in 10 minutes climbing to 200. Comments flooding. Obiekwe Interiors never misses. This is why you're the best. This is why you're the best. Goals. Victory tasted like ashes in his mouth. Ken sat alone in the living room, marble cold beneath him. The mansion stretched vast and accusing around him. On the stove in the kitchen, ogbono soup sat congealed, the smell that once meant home now making his stomach turn. He tried to throw it out twice, but his hand froze on the pot handle. His phone buzzed. Tenny's voice note. Babe, you did what a man must do. Boundaries are healthy. Tough love. We move forward now. Each word landed like a nail being hammered into something he couldn't name. He deleted it without responding. The glass staircase reflected a stranger, successful man in expensive loungewear, standing in a house that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. Ken walked through rooms at 3 a.m., insomnia turning him into a ghost haunting his own success. Mama's door stood open. He'd told staff not to touch it. Her Bible sat on the nightstand, pages worn soft from fingers that knew every verse. Rosary beads coiled beside it like a question he couldn't answer. The room smelled faintly of her, cocoa butter and something else, something that felt like safety before he understood what safety was. His phone, 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. A voice message from Father Obiekwe at St. Anthony's Parish. Ken deleted them all without listening. What could they say that would matter? What could anyone say? Staff moved through the mansion like they were afraid to breathe. Ibrahim avoided Ken's eyes during security reports. Ngozi looked haunted, her hands trembling when she served breakfast. The housekeeper who once laughed while cleaning now worked in silence that felt like judgment. Memories arrived uninvited. Mama running beside the bus the day he left for university, wrapper flying, arms reaching like she could hold him just a little longer. Her hands cracked and bleeding from carrying loads at mile 2. The countless nights she ate watery Gary, pushing the pieces of meat toward his side of the plate. Nwam, eat. You need strength to study. Business calls became autopilot. Yes, we can deliver Friday. Marble or granite? Sure, whatever you prefer. Words without meaning, success without substance. Rain continued for 3 days straight. Lagos rain that turned streets into rivers and exposed every crack in every foundation. Ken stood at windows watching water wash the driveway where his mother walked out, and something inside him whispered that no amount of rain could clean what happened here. Tenny arrived daily with wedding updates. Venue options spread across the dining table like blueprints for a future that felt increasingly unreal. Babe, I'm thinking blush pink and gold. Elegant. Timeless. What do you think? He stared at fabric swatches, seeing instead a green and gold wrapper soaked with rain. Ken, you're not even listening. Sorry. Yes. Whatever you think is best. Her excitement felt grotesque against the numbness spreading through him like an infection. She talked about seating charts and photographers while Ken felt himself drowning in a mansion built on foundations he'd just shattered. Night 4. Ken stood at the same window, watching rain erase the driveway over and over, nature's failed attempt at mercy. His reflection stared back, hollow eyes, expensive watch, success wrapped around him like chains. The first crack appeared in his armor. Not guilt yet. Guilt required courage he didn't have. Just a whisper, quiet as his mother's footsteps used to be. What have I done? The mansion didn't answer. It just echoed, vast and cold, filled with everything except the one thing that ever made it feel like home. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, something irreparable had broken, and Ken stood between them, finally understanding that some doors, once closed, can never be opened the same way again. The knock came at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, firm and unapologetic. Security buzzed the intercom. Sir, Father Obiekwe and one elderly woman. They insist. Ken's voice came out hoarse, scraped raw from sleepless nights. Let them in. They entered the living room like mourners at a funeral. Father Obiekwe in his black cassock, Mrs. Nwankwo from the women's group clutching a folder and flash drive against her chest. Not accusatory, just sorrowful, like they were delivering news of a death. Ken stood, suddenly aware of his wrinkled shirt, the stubble on his jaw, the mansion's cold marble under his feet. Mrs. Nwankwo opened the folder. Papers spilled across the glass coffee table, receipts, bank transfers, dates circled in red ink. Her voice was steady, each word a stone dropping into still water. Every month for 3 years. 30 women. 500 Nigerian nairas each from market sales, housekeeping wages, hairdressing money we could barely spare. She pointed to the transfer records. Collected by me. Transferred through the parish account. Ken stared at dates he recognized. The mysterious investor. The 15,000 Nigerian nairas that arrived when his furniture business nearly collapsed. The money he thought came from his father's people. A letter, edges worn soft from being folded and unfolded. Mama Ezinne's handwriting. The careful script she'd learned late in life. Each letter formed with the concentration of someone who knew words were precious. Do not tell my son. He is proud. Pride keeps him standing. but I am prouder watching him rise. Kin's hands trembled holding the paper. He knew that handwriting. The curl of the G's, the way she pressed hard on vowels like she was anchoring them to the page. His vision blurred. Father Okek's voice was quiet, bearing weight. Your mother asked us never to tell you. But she is in the clinic now. Surveillant General, Ward 3. And some truths must walk into light before it's too late. The flash drive. Father Okeke plugged it into Kin's laptop with the practiced motion of someone who'd done this reluctantly, knowing what it contained. CCTV footage. The glass staircase camera Kin had installed for security, then forgotten existed. The timestamp. 3 days before the expulsion. Tenny at the service corridor, glancing around, the bracelet glinting as she slipped it into her own bag. Cut to Tenny cornering Ngozi in the laundry room, the housekeeper's face crumbling. Cut to the wrapper being placed deliberately behind the washing machine. Cut to the stage discovery, Tenny's performance, staff assembled like props. Then the day itself. Mama Ezinne descending the stairs, confused, dignified. Kin's finger pointing like a weapon. His voice, distorted through speakers but unmistakable, get out now. His mother's flinch. The trembling hand over her heart. Kin lunged for the laptop, slammed it shut, but the images had already burned into his retinas. The room spun. The red polo shirt draped over a chair looked like a wound opened fresh. Mrs. Nwankwo placed a pill bottle on the table. Iron supplements. For anemia. Then a medical note in different handwriting. Dr. Okeke's actual assessment, not the forgery. Patient shows signs of iron deficiency anemia. Dizziness from low blood pressure, not dementia. Recommendation, rest, proper nutrition, continued monitoring. A brown envelope, official stamps intact. The deed for the warehouse in Ikeja, the logistics backbone that allowed Obiekwe Interiors to scale from startup to empire. The deed signed in Mama Ezinne's name. Dated 6 years ago. Purchased with money from selling her husband's ancestral land in Umuoji, the same land she told Kin a benefactor had preserved for him. The truth landed like a building collapsing in slow motion. His entire empire built on foundations his mother laid in secret, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, lie by loving lie. Father Okeke stood. She is at Surveillant Clinic. Ward 3. Pneumonia from 3 nights sleeping in the rain before Mrs. Nwankwo found her at the parish gate. They wanted to call you, but she said, his voice cracked. She said you were busy building your future. Mrs. Nwankwo gathered the papers slowly, each movement deliberate. At the door, she turned. My son, success that forgets its roots is just a tall tree waiting for wind. The door closed. Kin stood alone, evidence scattered across the coffee table like accusations given physical form. The mansion pressed in, cold, vast, accusing. Every marble tile suddenly felt like a gravestone. His phone in his hand. Mama's number on the screen. Fingers hovering over the call button. Outside, Lagos moved on. Traffic, noise, life. Inside, Kin finally understood what he'd done. Not just the expulsion. The years of distance. The shame of her wrappers. The ignored calls. The moment he chose image over truth. He'd built an empire on her bones and called it success. The phone felt impossibly heavy. Ward 3. Surveillant Clinic. His mother, alone, fighting pneumonia while he stood in a mansion her sacrifices built. Kin pressed call. The line rang into emptiness. Kin drove through rain to Surveillant, windshield wipers beating rhythm to his breaking heart. Lagos traffic, normally a grinding battle, seemed to part, as if the city itself was making way for something that couldn't wait. Surveillant General Clinic smelled like dental and boiled rice, fluorescent lights flickering over peeling paint. The opposite of his mansion. Everything his success was supposed to leave behind. Ward 3. Mama Ezinne asleep in a narrow bed, headscarf loose around her face. One hand clutching the small black handbag even in sleep. Kin's legs buckled. The wealthy CEO became the small boy again, kneeling beside her bed like he used to kneel for bedtime prayers in their one-room Ajegunle apartment. She woke slowly, eyes finding his face, studying him. The question silent but present. Has he come to finish the exile or to end it? Enemy, his voice cracked. I failed you. I became the thing you never raised. A man who values marble over memory. Mama's response wasn't immediate forgiveness. It was truth, spoken softly. Success is not evil, Nwam. But success that makes you cruel is poison wearing a suit. They talked. Really talked. Ken explained the pressure, the shame, the terror of being found out as the poor boy in expensive clothes. The fear that one wrong detail would expose him. Mama listened, then spoke with the wisdom of someone who'd survived worse. The world already knows where you came from. I told everyone proudly. The only person pretending was you. She opened the black handbag. The deed. The photograph of young Ken with swollen eyes. Receipts from sacrifices. A folded newspaper clipping. Ken's first business feature, edges worn from being touched. I kept these not to remind you of debt, but to remind myself why my hands bled, because you were worth it. Ken broke. Not performative tears, but the deep grief of understanding what he nearly destroyed. He pressed his forehead to her hand, shoulders shaking. Come home, Mama. Let me correct everything. The mansion door opened, the same door he'd expelled her through. This time, Ken carried her bag, his arms supporting her elbow, reversing the exile step by careful step. Tenny waited in the living room, arms crossed, practiced explanation ready. Babe, we can fix. Ken plugged in the flash drive. Silence held the room as the footage played. Tenny's face shifted through stages. Denial, deflection, blame shifting to staff. Finally, cornered, the truth emerged venomous. I did it because your brand needed protection from that. Ken's response came measured, final. You will leave my house today. The same door. The same words. Corrected target. Tenny's heels clicked on marble. Threats about his mistake, dissolving into rain as the city swallowed her the way it swallows everyone who mistakes cruelty for strategy. Changes came swiftly. Cameras removed from private areas. Staff paid properly, treated with dignity. Ibrahim dismissed. Ngozi forgiven after her tearful confession. Given a second chance, she'd spend years earning back. Mama Ezinne's room restored. Her small TV, her Bible, her routines honored as sacred. Ken posted the truth on Instagram. The full story, unfiltered. He expected backlash. Instead, redemption arrived in comments and DMs. People love perfection, but they need redemption. A celebrity client left, image over character, but 3 families reached out, respect for filial piety. The new rhythm settled like dust after a storm. Mama's cane tapping marble. Her morning prayers. Ken joining her sometimes, learning to sit still, to listen, to exist without performing. Sunday morning. Ken and Mama in the living room. Ogbono soup warming on the stove. Rain tapping gently on glass. Not the violent Lagos downpour, but the soft kind that feeds things trying to grow. Mama studied him over her Bible. Standing well is different from standing on people. You are learning. Ken looked at the glass staircase, its fractured reflections catching light. But he didn't see himself this time. He saw his mother, the foundation that was always there, holding everything up, waiting patiently for him to remember. Outside, rain continued its quiet work. Inside, something was healing, slowly, imperfectly, but real. The mansion was still marble and glass. But now it held something more valuable than success. It held truth. And truth, his mother always said, was the only foundation strong enough to build a life that lasts.